we got Cameron.
Hey, good morning. This is our October CTE webinar, and we welcome everybody who's joining us this morning. Those of you who might be new, this is a monthly webinar that we host the second Friday of each month from 10 o'clock to 11:30, and we try to cover topics that are important to you all as CTE coordinators, instructors, administrators. We do have a common theme that runs through our year this year, and that's using data and making data-driven decisions. And along with that, today we have some guest speakers that will be speaking on the precision exams, and we'll start that off first this morning. And then we have representatives from the Kansas Department of Labor who will be sharing with us current labor market information that might help us as we explore the notion of building stronger programs of study. So this morning I'll introduce Clela's here, and she's kind of coordinated the whole piece with the precision exams and her guest speaker. And just keep in mind, we're kind of a small group this morning, but it is interactive, so you can unmute yourself and talk and ask questions as we go along. Jody will also be monitoring the chat side of things. We will have documents that we can push out to you, and the webinar this morning is archived for anyone who might not be able to attend. We'll put that information out to you all as well. So with that, Clela, I'll let you get started and introduce your group.
Okay, first of all, I'd like to introduce Cameron Wilkinson. He is the state representative for Kansas, and in fact, he has some other states. And he's going to get on this morning and kind of give us a bird's eye view of precision exams. I had talked to him because I first became acquainted with precision exams with I had seen some things out at ACTE, and then I had gotten a hold of Lynn Archer because Lynn is using it, and then I worked with Cameron. But anyway, so what we're going to have this morning is Cameron is first of all going to give us kind of a overview of precision exams and how it's really user-friendly for small schools and that type of thing, as well as kind of just a little bird's eye view. They do have certification exams for all 16 clusters, which I think is very good to know. And then we'll have Cameron share overall. Then we're going to have Lynn answer questions, that kind of thing, kind of talk about the South Haven, which that's more of a smaller school. And then we'll have Stella Tharp on from Ottawa, which would be a larger school. So that kind of gives you the bird's eye view. Cameron, I want you to have all the time you can possibly use. So go ahead.
All right. Well, thanks for having me here today. And just a quick time check. What is the amount of time that we have allotted so I can make sure we fit to that?
What did he say?
How much time does he have?
We have at least 20 minutes for you, Cameron.
Very good. All right. So we'll do that here. Now, I do want to start with a couple slides. Let me attempt to share my screen and let me know if this is working. Can y'all see?
Yes.
Quantifying the value of CT. Excellent. Fabulous. Okay. So I wanted to start just by, giving everybody a quick overview of who we are as precision exams. Now, some of this will be repetitive for folks like Lynn or Stella or Deb who are already utilizing our system. So I'd ask them to bear with me. But if they have anything to share or to kind of pipe in terms of their experience, I'd love to have that be part of it as well. So precision exams, we are a sole source provider of 160 course level exams. So we call them career skills exams. They're course level CTE exams and certification. We've tested over 4.5 million exams throughout the country. We're testing in 46 states, and we're entirely CTE focused. One of the things that's interesting and that I'd point out as well is that we have some pretty cool state level partnerships across the country. And so in Utah, Washington, Colorado, New Hampshire, Indiana, in states like that, we have state level partnerships that range all the way from, where we deliver exclusively all CTE testing in the entire state of Utah to states where we simply have state level partnerships that allows the program to be a little bit more accessible to districts throughout the state because of state partnerships. So we've got a lot of those, and we sure enjoy our kind of our operations and our work that we do with states, districts, and even down to individual teacher levels. And I work at all those different levels as well. Cleo already mentioned that we have exams that cover all 16 of the national career clusters. And I'll just point this out again. I know this is repetitive, but I'll point out again that they are course level exams. Most folks think about end of pathway when they think about CTE testing. That's where your mind kind of automatically goes. Well, our exams are course level exams, and they span all 16 of the national career clusters. I'll point out also this 21st century success skills. I know, for example, Lynn is utilizing this in South Haven. Kansas City, Kansas is using it, and I think some of the other folks that we have on the call here today are using this as well. This is a career readiness measure, or there's really a few exams in this cluster, but the 21st century success skills exam is a career readiness measure that you can administer pre and post test. All of our exams you can do pre and post test, but you can do pre and post tests on 21st century success skills, and it will help you understand how your students are growing in the space of career readiness throughout the year. So it's a good way of connecting our CTE programs to career readiness and seeing what impact do they truly have as we move forward. Okay, so just a quick thought on certification or the different types of assessments that you would typically see in CTE courses. So you would see certification testing on one side of the spectrum and standardized testing on the other side of the spectrum. In most cases, the value proposition that these offer are mutually exclusive, right? The student receives some benefit of, earning a certification, but in most cases, there's very little benefit that comes back to the organization, very little data that comes back to the organization. Standardized assessment is the other side of that coin. You get data back to the organization, but kids don't view this as, really, it doesn't mean anything for their grade, and they don't see much value that comes out of it. Our program really bridges the gap and offers not only certification opportunities for kids, but it offers a very robust data set that can help educators make decisions regarding CTE programs, program improvement, professional development opportunities, sequencing decisions. I know in Junction City right now, they're making sequencing decisions based on 1,000 pretests that were run at the start of this semester. So there's some pretty neat data that comes out of this system. For the sake of time, because we've got about 20 minutes, I'm just going to breeze past this. But basically, this is a study that Gallup has provided that shows that what employers care about is knowledge and skills. So our career skills certificate, the certification that students can earn, it really leverages the idea of what are the knowledge and skills that I have attained during my CTE course of study. So, the front of the certificate's important. It shows the name of the student, the course level standard in which they've demonstrated proficiency, in this case, business management. But for every exam, there's a national standard that underpins that exam. So that is printed on the back of the certificate. This is how we map back to knowledge and skills. This is how the student can demonstrate, I've attained a high level of proficiency in a national standard, and this is the national standard that I've shown that in. As such, we want students to start thinking about how to present themselves differently, rather than just simply saying that they've earned a high school diploma and this was my GPA. We want them to start leveraging those knowledge and skills and kind of showing on their resume, having a skills-based resume. What are the certificates that I've earned? What are the knowledge and skills that underpin those certifications? So this is what your student's new resume would look like. Okay. I mentioned state level partnerships. These are a couple of the private label certifications that we provide for different states, but we've already talked about that, so I'll move on. One of the big benefits that we're seeing, particularly in the state of Kansas, but also across the nation, is if you're looking for a way to measure technical skill attainment, the pre and post test, and it delivers two things. It delivers a way to measure technical skill attainment, and we've been talking to some of the folks at the state, Jay Scott in particular, and Martin Coleman, about how technical skill attainment can be measured and kind of connected back to customized pathways. And so our pre and post testing does a very good job of measuring that. It can also measure student growth. And so you look at your pre-test and your post-test scores, and the system will automatically spit out the difference in growth. So I'll show you that here in just a moment. Okay, the standards that underpin our exams are really important. And for the sake of time today, I'm just going to pull up quickly some of our standards. So everything we do starts at precisionexams.com/Kansas. You can head here. You can click on exam list. When I went to the web browser, my screen's still sharing, I presume?
Yes.
Perfect, thank you. So I can click on exam list and scroll down to all of the career clusters that we have available. It's all 16 career clusters. And then if I want to see the standards that underpin one of these, I can click on the career cluster, and if I want to see business management, I click knowledge standard to the right of that. And this is how your teachers can get in and they can determine what is going to be covered on the exam to make sure that they're, teaching to national standards. So this can be a very helpful tool in guiding the teaching efforts of the individual teachers. It can also be a very helpful tool in terms of being a customized study guide for the students. I'll show you that in just a moment. For each of our standards, let's see here. Oh, sorry about that. I meant to close this.
Lost your screen.
He's coming.
Am I back?
You're back.
Okay.
Your screen's not back. Or are we on?
My screen's not back? Okay, hold on. Sorry. I think I accidentally closed that down.
There you go.
Okay, very good. So, when we click the knowledge standard, it will also show you what percentage of the exam is comprised of each standard. So this is a CAD and mechanical design exam. 1% of the exam is standard number 1, so on and so forth. There's specific objectives and indicators under each standard, and these are the information from which the exam questions or the items are derived. Okay, so that's how the standards work. Let me see if I can, there we go. I'm gonna go back here, and I wanna show you just a little bit, there we go, about some of the data that you can get back out of the system. So this is one of my favorite reports. It's a standards level report for teachers. So this will show for an individual class the exam that was taken. You see a matrix down below here which shows the student names on the vertical axis, the standard numbers on the horizontal axis, and then a key above which shows you for this exam what is each standard. So you can dig in and see how your individual students are doing, how the class is doing on average, and really how your class compares to the state averages as well. Now, school and district administrators have the ability to see this data in aggregate for the school level, for the district level, all the way down to the classroom level or down to the individual student level. So teachers can see classroom and student level data. School administrators can see one level up for school data, and then district administrators can see for the whole district. So there's role-based access to the data. Moving on, this is the student score report, which basically shows your student, it gives them real-time immediate feedback of how they've done on the exam. So in this case, the student has done not as well on standard 3. They can print out that standard and focus their studying efforts there. And then lastly, this is the pre and post kind of growth reporting. This is what we call our summary suite report. It shows the pre, the post, and then the change once all of that data is in. Okay, I was wanting to show you a live exam as well for those who haven't seen it, just so they can see what the testing environment is like. Any quick questions before we move on to that? Okay, very good. I know we probably don't have a ton of time, so I'm going to be brief on this. Basically, your proctors log in. Teachers can act as their own proctors. They log in by going to that same web page and clicking proctor login. They set up a username and a password, and that takes them straight into the system, and they can click add test. They describe their test. They can put their period and their quarter or semester. There's drop downs here. If they're doing a pre-test or a post-test, they can link those two exams here. For today's purposes, I'm going to do a single assessment. And then they'll get the list of all 160 exams that they have to choose from. I'm going to go here to a sample exam. This is kind of a funny little sample exam, but it shows you what the testing environment is like. Oh, goodness gracious. I've logged in with the wrong username. They changed our usernames recently, so I apologize. I'm going to have to log in with a different username. Give me just a quick second here. Okay. I'm going to do the same thing here. I'm going to click single assessment. I'm going to click sample. Okay, so now I have my ESDEC test code here. Imagine that this is for an individual classroom of students. You've got your test code right here. And then when I'm ready to proctor the exam, I simply click proctor. And this will show me my live proctor window. Your students, as they connect to the system, their names will appear down here. So I'm going to copy this test code and show you what the student experience looks like. So the students go to student login. They enter their student ID number. I'm just going to enter a fake one here. And then they enter the test code that the teacher gave them. The teacher may have written that on the whiteboard or something. Now they're ready to take the test, but they're not connected. They're not authorized yet. The teacher goes back here and clicks refresh. It automatically rosters them to the system. The teacher doesn't have to go in and type in names individually or anything like that. They click select or select all if there's a group, and they click authorize. Now, within a couple seconds, your student is going to be connected to the test and they'll be able to start the exam. They click start test, and you can see there's a summary of the test that they're taking, the amount of time that they have remaining. Our exams are designed to be administered in a single class session. So average time to completion is 35 to 45 minutes. The students have up to 90 minutes to complete the exam. The exam questions are interactive. This is a good example of a question here. So we've got a supporting image, and we're trying to match the different types of tissue to their descriptions. So the students can drag and drop these responses into the proper category. If they want to flag this question for later review, they click flag for follow-up, and then they can head on and continue taking the exam. By the way, this is a question that has images and multiple choice responses that also have images. This is a silly little test. You can see the rigor of this question is very low. That's obviously the front tire. This is made for demonstrative purposes to show you how this little pin situation works. I'm dragging the pin into the appropriate portion of the image. Let's get a few points on this exam. I wasn't paying attention to any of the responses on the other questions. Oh, there we go. We get a few points. This is a question where you've got an image, a multiple choice question with a supporting image. This is a matching type question. That's a very similar question. So I think you get the idea. There are multiple choice type questions or true or false type questions as well. Select 2, select 3 type questions, but it's interactive. Okay, so when the student's ready, they can click submit test. If they need to get back in, any of the questions are editable. So they can go in and change things around up until the time that they submit the test to be scored. Once they're ready to have the test scored, they click this blue button and they get automatic feedback. So I got 20% correct on this. If I wanted to enter my email address here, I could enter it like that. I could click send score report. And when I close the test, the student will automatically receive a copy of the student score report in their inbox. So going back to this report right there, they'll get a copy of that in their inbox. Just a couple of quick kind of profile ideas about who we are and what we offer in terms of the type of tests. So you can see there's a robust catalog of different types of exams. This print is very small, but if you want to navigate it yourself, you can go to precisionexams.com/Kansas and click on the exam list button, and you'll be able to see that exact same list of exams that we have. But it's a robust list. If you have a CTE program, there is a good chance that we have an exam that will support that program. Pricing, we are far and away the lowest price provider of CTE assessments in the country by many, many factors. So if you're going to do something similar to what Lynn Archer has done in a smaller school, you can purchase a block of exams. They're $6 an exam. If you're a larger school like Ottawa, and what Stella's doing over there, you can do a site license where for $3,950, you have unlimited testing for the entire year. And I haven't looked at Ottawa in particular recently, Stella, but I know, for example, in Junction City, I looked at that the other day. Those folks are on track to do about $14,000 worth of testing if they had done it at $6 an exam for $4,000. So this site license is a very, very good deal for schools that have a lot of CTE pathways, or for schools that have enrollment numbers that are substantial. So anyway, that's kind of my presentation here today. I can certainly field any questions that anybody might have, or kind of go back to revisit any of the reports, data, or anything that I've shared so far.
Cameron, I think you've given us a very good overview of precision exams, but does anyone have questions for Cameron?
Hey, Cleo, I kept it right to 20 minutes, almost to the minute there. So
I'm proud of you. Okay, and so that you have a small school perspective, we have Lynn Archer from South Haven on our webinar this morning. Lynn, are you there?
Can I ask Cameron? Cameron, can you click on our thumbnail and make us host again?
Can I click on what?
Just click on on our video feed there, make us host again.
Okay, yeah. So sorry, how do I do that?
You should just be able to click on it. You get a little list, and there should be make host on there.
Okay, and this is the ASDEC meetings thumbnail?
Yes.
Okay, there we go. I think I've done it.
Thank you.
Yeah.
And then Lynn wanted to share a few things.
Okay.
Okay, so we looked at precision exams for a number of reasons. One of the we're looking at student growth measures, and one of the things that I kept getting feedback from my CTE teachers was, well, we talk a lot about English and math and science, but how can we measure student growth?
Next.
And then several of them also admitted that they didn't feel that they were writing rigorous tests for end of class assessments. So when we saw precision exams, we thought that this might help with both of those factors. So we initially
transport, whether everybody will or.
can you guys hear me? So we initially started with We initially started in the ag department because that was the teacher who'd
Well, I
explained.
think we'll need to bring some over for judging if they've entered those robotics or.
They should be able to.
Hey, can we just ask for the, so we can hear, for everybody is muted, check your computer, or I don't think we have any.
Well, if they're going to present to the judges for robotics or the open
Hey,
category.
Lynn, I think you have the host.
They're
You
just
might be able to
submitting
click
something.
mute all.
Yeah, Lynn, if you click on them,
They don't need to be there.
you can mute their audio.
I can only see where I can mute my audio.
Well, you can, but I'm not going to have it all on display till.
Video, the picture there.
I'm not going to put it out for display. I won't start till that afternoon, like from. Yeah.
Travis, so much.
Nice job, and then Stucky.
Yeah.
Lynn, can you roll your mouse over?
If they're needing, I got the judges coming at 12 at noon.
And then can you
Okay.
make one?
Okay.
Okay, but I think I've muted everybody now.
Okay, thank you, Lynn.
Okay.
Sorry about that.
So we started with our ag department, but we also are doing a lot of work with employability skills or soft skills or 21st century skills, whatever we're calling them in Kansas. And so I was really intrigued when Cameron said that they had an assessment that looked at those skills as well. So I'm going to try and share my screen with you because I have some results that I wanted to share with you. So let me see whether I can do this. Here we go. All right, so this is, can you guys see my screen? Okay, let me get rid of this. Okay, so this is the test that we gave to, we actually gave it to our 8th grade students who take Intro to Ag. One of the things Cameron had told us was that the test was written probably, or the test in general had about a 10th grade reading level, but we really wanted to see what that actually meant. So we actually gave this test to our 8th graders who take Intro to Ag, and we had one of our reading teachers actually sit and watch the test so that she could see how some of our lower achieving students were able to handle it, and they actually were reading this themselves. So we actually felt that we could give it to them and then be successful. So I took out the student names, but you can see the standards that they were assessed on. And one of the we did tell the students ahead of time that it was a pre-test, so it wasn't going in the grade book, and the idea was to say, what do you know? And then they'll take it at the end of the school year, and hopefully they know more than they did on the 30th of August when we started school. For some of our students to get a result that came back and said fail was the first time they'd ever seen an F or a fail. And so we had to put a lot of work in with them that this wasn't a bad thing. But we were looking for growth. And so we actually got them to set targets for how much they wanted to grow by.
Lynn, can I just point one quick thing out also?
Sure.
As it relates to this result column that says fail, we've kind of rethought that nomenclature, and I don't know exactly when this change will be made, but really what that means is certification, yes or no. So our exams, if the student achieves a score of 80% or higher, they receive a certification. So at some point soon here, we are going to change that column to say certification, and then it will say yes or no instead of pass or fail. Because of course, you can utilize these grades and these percentages for however you want in terms of course credit. It just means, did they earn the certification?
And one of the things we discussed that. So then what my teacher did, he actually looked at the standards and looked at where these students had done weaker on, and is actually making adjustments to his teaching to reinforce areas that the students obviously had showed that they had weaker understanding of. So I think that was beneficial. Then we looked at the, we actually have a graduation requirement for our juniors and seniors that they take personal finance class. So we gave all of the students that were enrolled this semester, this is a pre-test, and this, Cameron, if I'm right from our conversation, this is the only one that has a pass rate of 71% for some reason.
That's right. That is the cut rate for that, and that's based on statistical analysis, test validation and so forth. So that is correct for this particular exam.
So as you can see with this one, these were mainly seniors, that we had several of them right at the beginning of the school year who were able to achieve the certification because they got this child got 75%. Now, because we're doing a pre-test, post-test, they didn't actually get the certificate because they have to have taken the post-test in order to get the certificate. So that was when we explained that to them, they were like, oh, so I've got to do this again. So we said, well, yes, but let's set a goal for improvement because you're going to learn something else during the course. So that was how we kind of tackled that. And then we also, where do I have it in here? We also gave our seniors, and I think this may be it. We gave our seniors the 21st century skill. I may not have it downloaded. No, we gave our seniors the 21st century skill test. And unfortunately, none of them passed. So that provoked a lot of conversation in our district about what we need to do to address that. And actually we sat down as a staff and looked at the standards, and then different teachers who are teaching different subject areas have taken elements from those standards are going to be reinforcing that in lower grade levels, so that we hope that over time, when we give this test to seniors, that they will be able to show mastery of those standards. So that's how we're using it in South Haven. It went down really well. The kids, I don't know whether they enjoyed the test, but they appreciated that it was more interactive than just some of the tests that they've taken before. The teachers definitely appreciated the data that they got and are using that. My facts teacher dove into the different tests that were available and actually matched them to her CTE competencies, and then gave the different tests to different classes. So it's been very well received. Be interesting to see what happens when we give the post tests, to see the student growth, or to see how the teachers use the information they get to change their instruction. If, for example, the students haven't grown in the areas that the teachers felt that they put a lot of effort into teaching. So it's early days, but I'm really pleased so far. And for me, the $6 a test was the cheapest way to go. But I think it's good value for money based on the information we have so far. Does anybody have any questions?
Well, I just want to tell you, Lynn, I really appreciate you helping us kind of get a bird's eye view of what it's like implementing this in a small school.
And it's so simple to do. I mean, it's literally generate that code, give the kids that code, they log on. I mean, it's simple. The teacher gets the results almost instantaneously, as do the kids. It's not like we have to wait 6 months and then we're told maybe these tests are valid and maybe they're not. We've also talked about using them as finals, the post-test as a final, and we've talked about if the kids are in one pathway and they take the test for each of the class in that pathway, about combining that score and using it as part of our end of pathway exam. So I think it has lots of potential.
And we did have a question that came on regarding to the cost of the pre-test and the post-test. It is $6 each way. I do know Cameron and I have talked about a possible consortium scenario that we'd be able to reduce the cost some. So stay tuned. If there's interest, first of all, we have to get the information out there as to what precision exams is and that kind of thing. And then second of all, we have to see how much interest there might be, that then maybe we could, just like we've done some other things, do some kind of a group rate.
Let's see. Cameron, for you, there's a question. Can people that are on now or in campus get a demo account for the precision exams, maybe to show school board members, administration, those type of things?
Yes, absolutely. There's two ways that we can set that up. And it looks like this came from Tammy. Tammy, or anybody else who has this question or wants to get set up. I can either do a live demonstration like this for your group. I'm happy to do that. I also have what I would call kind of a sandbox account where I could create a username and a password for you. And you would be able to get into sample exams and kind of use it as though you were in the live environment. Honestly, I don't do that very often because people, when they see the live demo and they see the cost, most of the time they're just saying, well, just set me up with a real account as opposed to a sandbox account. But I can set you up with a sandbox or a demo type account that has access to some limited sample exams, but not all of the full exams, if that makes sense. So, I will type my contact information to everyone here into the chat. Please, take that down and let me know if you'd like to get that set up. I can do that for you.
Can you tell me a little bit what in your samples, how many of those are covered? Is there a good representation, I guess, so that if a school were to get on and set up, or do you do that individually at the school that you're talking to? Because I might not have every pathway is what I'm saying.
Right. So just so that I understand, you're asking, like, in the sandbox type account, is there good representation of all different kind of types of pathways? Is that what you're asking?
In the sample. So if I were to present this to a school board, obviously for the monetary commitment,
Yeah.
They actually see what results would look like for the pathways that we would have in our school.
Yeah, so there is a good kind of cross-section of a few different pathways. It doesn't cover all the pathways, but it will give you a good idea of what the testing environment's like, what the data that you can get out of the system, and then if you need specific information to those different pathways, then you just go to the standards, right? You go to exam list on our website, and you can load the standards, and that will show you the very pathway or course-specific information that you need.
Okay, thank you.
Yeah.
And I think we answered Angela's question, the $6 for the pre-test and another $6 for the post-test.
Yep, that's right. Or the site license for schools. I'll give you just a quick tidbit on the site license. Normally what I say is schools that have at least 400 to 500 kids are a good candidate for a site license. There are some schools that I have that are looking at site licenses that are, 170 kids, but they are so intensely focused in CTE. They offer so many different pathways and programs that we've run the numbers for them, and a site license. So normally that site license ends up being the best option if you have at least 400 kids, and sometimes if you have less than 400 kids, because you just can do unlimited pre, post, and it ends up being a very high value. So.
Perfect. Yeah. Miss Stella from Ottawa, Kansas, would you like to share some information how you're using them, maybe some plans in the future? Tell us about your experience with precision exams.
Hello.
Hi.
Let's see, I'm coming. Hello, can you hear me now?
We can hear you.
Good, can you hear me now? I can't hear you guys.
Stella, can you hear us?
Now I can.
Okay.
Good. Good. So, well, first off, thank you for having me. This is a joy.
Thanks for being here and getting us up. Stella, do you have little kids today, your little preschoolers?
No, not today.
Okay.
Not today. So, I just want to talk to you a little bit about what we did. First off, Cameron, I want to tell you just best estimate. I think we probably gave about 350 exams for our pre-tests at Ottawa.
Turn your camera on.
I don't have a camera on this computer.
Okay, then that takes care of it. All right.
You need to build that into the new Ottawa bond issue, okay? You need to.
Yeah, right.
Stella,
Hey,
good news. Good news for you.
Okay.
It's actually far more than that. I just ran a report for Ottawa, and you've done over 900 exams.
Oh, okay.
Yay.
Good job. Good work.
Let me give you a little bit of background where we're at in Ottawa. We have about, we have 14 different pathways. And when we went to our one-to-one initiative, we changed up our assessment schedule. And so one day a year, we give all of our assessments. Freshmen take the Aspire, sophomores take the state assessments, juniors take the ACT, and seniors take the work keys. And that fits in with our precision exams because our Economic Council recognizes the work keys. And so students that come in that have passed the work keys, they kind of have a leg up on everybody else. And so what we've done now is we have brought to our Economic Development Council the precision exams. And we've said, look, we are starting something new. We're going to have students that, as they finish up classes, are going to have certificates showing that they have passed national standards in certain areas. And so they're looking at those exams and they're saying to employers, for our high school students, these kids are passing these exams. These are the skill sets that they're going to have. Will you please take a look at them and consider them for the various opportunities for jobs that we have in our community? So we think that's a plus for our kids to be able to show them that they are taking their CTE classes very seriously. So we think that's a positive for us and for our students. I would like to share with you what our teachers said. Unfortunately, unlike South Haven, we are not as far along in our data analysis as what they are. The positives that our teachers found in administering the precision exams. First off, the setup and the giving of the exams, they said, just unbelievable. It was so easy. They were able to give it in the amount of time of the class period. And especially for our special ed students that needed extended time in order to follow their IEPs, the staff, they were able to call, get the modifications that they needed, went smooth. And our special ed folks, they thought it was very helpful to be able to talk to our CTE teachers and get that going. Our students felt that they got their accommodations and it worked very well.
Hey, Stella, and you are on a 7-period day, correct?
Yes.
Yes.
So our classes are 53 minutes.
Perfect.
The students liked the interactive. They liked the fact that it wasn't just a multiple choice test. And they were pretty much engaged the whole time that they were taking the assessment. And that was a plus. And so the cost, of course, we've already talked about the cost, but from a district standpoint, our board was very much on board with the cost, and they didn't get any cost too much, or this isn't worth it. They just signed it and we did it. Customer service. I, being one of the ones that had a few issues here and there, called up and said, this kid's not logged on right, or we had this issue, and immediate attention. Didn't have to wait. The staff took care of the problem, and that kiddo in class got got taken care of. We got the issue resolved right away. All of that took care of it. We had just really good results. Some of the parts that we talked about as a staff, our automotive teacher, the tests follow very closely with what he does, but what he found is that he has several kids that repeat several of his classes. And so what he found is he was giving the test 2 or 3 times to the same kid. And so he has had to rethink that, because what he found is about the 3rd time that that student was taking the test, the score was getting a little lower. And so he's revamping how he's going to do that when he gives the post-test. So there are just little hitches like that as a staff, we're going to have to figure those things out. I know somebody was asking about the different pathways. In our arts and AV communication, our teacher that teaches journalism, she felt that none of the tests at this point fit that pathway. That is one of the pathways that she didn't administer any of the tests for that pathway. So that's one that she's just going to go ahead, and she has talked to her state consultant, and they're going to figure out something else for end of course. One of the other things that the teachers would like to have is they would like to be able to see all the questions. And that's something, even though they can see all the standards, they would still like to be able to see more of the questions and see how that all fits together in order to enhance their teaching. But again, you know how teachers are sometimes. But overall, the experience was very well received, and during our PLC time right now, we are going over the data, looking for those things in common in the various departments and in the various pathways. And our fall advisory boards are November the 9th, and so we will be presenting the data to our advisory boards then, and looking at how it will help with instruction and what we can do to improve.
Perfect.
And we all just finished up about 3 weeks ago, giving the pre-tests.
Hey, this is Cameron. I did want to mention one thing as it relates to teachers being able to see the actual questions that are going to be on the exam. Our program is actually set up and designed because these are kind of high stakes national exams. They have certifications attached to them, and just generally, it's kind of a philosophical principle of our team that we would like to encourage teachers teaching to the standard and students learning to the standard, as opposed to teaching to the test and learning to the test. That is the reason that we provide the standard as opposed to the test in advance. Now, if there's a specific evaluation need where a teacher really does need to get in and see the specific questions, we don't have any problem doing that. There's just a small kind of disclosure that we need to have them kind of sign to make sure that they're can get access to the test in advance, making sure that it's not going to be used inappropriately. But in any event, that is the principle behind the way we've set it up. It's teaching to the standards and learning to the standards, as opposed to teaching to the test and learning to the test, if that makes sense.
And I would say my teachers asked exactly the same thing as Stella's. So I had a conversation with them about, why do you want to see the questions? And they said, so we know what to teach them so they do well on the test. And I went, then I'm not going to ask for the questions. That is not a good reason to see the question.
Yeah.
I agree with you
I think we have
wholeheartedly.
to be firm that we're not teaching to the test anymore. We're teaching to standards. And if we start to, if we veer from that, then we're just going back to our previous bad practice.
I agree with you wholeheartedly, but I also felt like this is what they said, and so it was my role to present what they said and share with you what the teachers in CTE said.
No, still, I think that you hit it head on for us that are thinking about it in our schools and getting staff buy-in and that conversation with the teachers, and that's something that we can be prepared for, and Cameron as well. That way you guys are supplying with still what to be ready for, and Cameron, being able to have the verbiage to be able to, comfort them a little bit, just a reminder that we're teaching to the standards and student, and so absolutely. So no, thank you for sharing. We need to know the good, the bad, and the ugly when we're looking at all these options. Thank you.
I agree. Thanks for bringing that up, Stella. It is a question that comes up constantly. So I'm glad you brought it up so that we could kind of discuss it here. That's helpful.
I think, Deb, did you have something that you wanted to share about the exams and concentrators status?
Right. I attended the new CTE coordinators on Wednesday that was held here in Salina by KSDE. And Peggy Dorn, when she was talking about pathway approval certification and then their completer status, she indicated that in exams, you're looking at using those for concentration status. You would take the scores from all of the technical level courses that the students are taking and average those scores, and that's how you come up with the verification that the student has passed their assessment. I think it reads, I had it in front of me, it just says average of the two end of course for the two courses that they're needing for that concentrate, and then the provision exams will work for that. I thought I'd figure that out.
You cut it out a little bit on us.
Let me try it again.
There you go.
Concentrator status, where they have a student has to just two courses in the pathway. Peggy indicated that if you use decision exams, you could take the end of course assessment for the two classes that you're using and then average that score, and that gives the exam score or third-party assessment, however it reads, that a student needs to have that validation to concentrate. That's how the precision exams work for that.
Yeah. Yes, perfect. Thanks for sharing. We have other questions in there that got answered through the industry recognized. A question that someone had was, to what extent are the precision exams industry recognized? And then Cameron kind of answered that. Is there anybody who has that question, or did Deb kind of?
I did cover that in the presentation, but if y'all want me to go deeper here, I can go a little bit deeper. Do you want to talk more about that?
Well, unfortunately, we do have a full agenda, and so
okay, all right.
through.
We might bring you back on another month or something, and maybe do follow-up questions or something like that.
The short answer is they're industry recognized because they are national standards, right? And so they may not know who precision exams is, but they know the knowledge and skills that they're seeking. And when the student can show that they've demonstrated proficiency in a national standard, and it maps and it connects to the knowledge and skills that they're seeking, that's what employers are looking for. The idea of industry recognition is a bit of a unicorn outside of AWS and ASE. Generally, employers don't know the names of the testing companies. They don't know who Precision Exams is. They don't know who Nocti is. They don't know who any of these companies are, but they do know the knowledge and skills they're seeking. That's why we have the national standards. And I'd be very happy to talk more in depth about that with anybody. We could do a whole session on that, but that's the very, very short answer.
Jody?
Yes, Stella.
I have one other comment I would like to make.
Yeah.
Having given the pre-PAC assessments, end of pathway assessments for early childhood, one of the other things I like about the precision exams is that at the end of the course, it gives you a really nice idea where your students are standing. And I know that Junction City has used this for their health science assessments. And it's just really been a nice tool to see where your students are. And also, since a lot of our early childhood courses are year-long courses, it also gives you a nice feel for those students that are taking year-long courses versus semester courses.
Yeah, good point.
Exactly, yeah.
So I just wanted to add that.
Thank you.
Okay, all right. Any other questions? A lot of information, a lot of great information, and moving forward with that. So thank you for everyone for sharing on that.
Thank you for Cameron and thank you, Lynn, for coming on, and for Stella. Appreciate this, and then we'll just kind of, Cameron, I'll follow up with you, and we may do another time where we can bring in another aspect of this.
Okay, sounds good. Thanks to everybody for having me. I appreciate the time today.
Thank
All right, thank you.
I think we'll move on to our next featured area, and that would be with the idea of looking at building stronger programs of study. And as we go through that process, it's important for us to look at labor market information across the state. And today we have Tyler Tinbrink from the Kansas Department of Labor, who will be sharing some information with us about the results of high need, high demand areas in Kansas. And also, I think he has a cohort at the Department of Labor that will give us a little bit of information on the Kansas Career Navigator. And Jay Scott's with us, I believe, today, and he might also add his thoughts on that and where they are in that process. So at this time, Tyler, I'm going to have you take over, and you can then share your slides and your screen with us as you talk about the labor market information and why that's important for us to look at that as we are examining our programs of study, because we really want to make sure that we don't have programs of study that are not leading to viable employment for our students here in Kansas. So Tyler, welcome this morning, and I thank you again for joining us and putting your presentation together, and I'll let you take it from there.
Thank you, Joni. Can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Okay, I'm going to try to share my screen here.
Is he moderator?
Yeah.
Okay, there you go.
Perfect. We can see your screen.
Okay. Okay. As Joni said, my name is Tyler Tinbrink. I'm an economist at the Kansas Department of Labor. One of the projects I work on is creating a list of high demand occupations each year. And that list is where we start at when we start looking at creating the CTE list each year. So that's one of the uses of our high demand list. We also have a lot of requests for, you know, what jobs are in high demand in the state of Kansas. Our data is for the state of Kansas. The information that we use in the list all comes from surveys that we do here at Kansas Department of Labor, and it's collected from employers. So that's why the title of my presentation is Demand Side, because this information that I'm presenting is coming from employers around the state. So they have the demand for labor. First, there are three sources that go into the high demand occupation list. The first one is the job vacancy survey. As I said, we do the job vacancy survey here in-house. We do it each year. We do it in the second quarter, and we survey employers, and we ask them, what job openings or vacancies do you have at this time? Our latest release right now is the one we did earlier this year in 2016. And as I said, it reports the number of job openings. There's also some other data that we get. We get the length of time the vacancy has been open, what education is required, the establishment size, which would be the size of the business in terms of number of employees, the hourly wage they're willing to pay, if benefits are offered, temporary, if it's a temporary or part-time, or if it's full-time or permanent. Those things we also find out. This year we found out there were statewide 44,826 openings. That's a vacancy, that's 3.2 vacancies per every 100 positions filled. And that was down a little bit from last year. Last year we had about 47,000 vacancies. Combined food preparation, that was the #1 occupation that had the most openings, 2,538. That occupation is typically in the top 1 or 2. It's been there for about 3 years now.
Hey, Tyler, can I
Yes.
interrupt for a second? On your slide, if you're moving through, we're not seeing that. We're stuck on the first slide. So I think your information's on your second
Okay.
slide. And
Yes.
we can't see that. We just see the first page.
Is he using 2 monitors?
Oh, here.
So I bet you he's on presenter view.
Okay.
Next. Nope. Can you see the job vacancies slide?
No, what we see is your, like your edit view of your PowerPoint. So your slides are to the side. And so now we can see it. That's perfect. There you go.
Now? Okay.
Perfect. Thank you.
So now if I go here, can you see the 3rd slide?
Yes, you're good to go. Thank you so much.
Okay. Okay, thank you for letting me know. So 69% of the openings were full-time this year. That was up a little bit from last year. Last year, 61% of the openings were full-time. So I'll go on to the next slide. This slide is from our job vacancy also, just an example of the information that we have from that. This shows the 5-year trend going back to 2012, showing the number of vacancies, and this is broken down by local area. So we do have this information by local area in the state. As I mentioned, this year, second quarter of 16, we're down a little bit in the number of vacancies from last year. There were a couple of areas that had an increase. You can see the colored areas are actually per local area. So we had a couple of areas that had an increase. The yellow, we had an increase. That's the Northeast area from 8,200 to 9,600. Also, the Southeast area had an increase in openings from 2,293 to 4,971. So that's an example of a little bit of what we get from job vacancy. Now, I created a list of high demand jobs just using the job vacancy survey, not using the other 2 sources. At the end, we'll get to a more comprehensive list using all the sources that we have, but these are the occupations that had the most vacancies based on the job vacancy survey. This list only includes those jobs with an education of associate's degree or post-secondary non-degree award. So I threw out all the other occupations and just included those, and I ranked those by vacancy. So interestingly, many of the occupations that made this list were related to the medical field: nursing assistants, registered nurses, licensed practical, dental assistants, respiratory therapists, medical records and health technologists, radiological technologists, dental hygienists, cardiovascular medical assistants, surgical technologists, emergency medical technicians. So in the data that comes directly from the employers in the state, they had a high demand of medical related occupations. Now, I'll point your attention to the education column. You'll see at the top, registered nurses is still classified as an associate's degree. And I realize, I've heard from talking to people in the industry that may not any longer be the case, that most nurses have a bachelor's degree. What we determine the education based on is of most of the people who are working in that occupation or who are registered nurses, what degree did they have when they entered the occupation? And it's still the case that most nurses entered the occupation with an associate's degree. So that's how we come to that education value. Also, we have a column that shows the median wage in 2015. That's the most recent wage data that we have collected, and that's from Kansas employers. The highest wage in this list was down at cardiovascular technologists and technicians. at 53,000. Excuse me. That's not right. Anyway, median wage for all occupations in 2015 was 33,700. We like to use the median instead of the average because sometimes the average wage can be skewed by some high earning folks in that occupation. So I think the median wage is a better measure of central tendency. And I'll move on. The second source that we use to create our high demand list is called short-term projections. We create these here at Department of Labor each year. We project the number of jobs by occupation and industry 2 years out from the base period. So the projections that we have out now have been out for a year or so. We're getting ready to work on a new round, but we use the base period 2015 to project out the number of jobs in 2017. We'll be done with the 2016, 2018 rounds later this spring. Total jobs are projected to increase 2.2% over the 2-year period. That's adding 32,000 jobs. After we made that projection, job growth in the state started to slow a bit. So I think we're going to look back and see that we overestimated job growth. The occupation that had the most job growth was heavy and tractor trailer truck drivers, with 1,105 new jobs over the 2-year period. That's a 2.6% increase per year, which is pretty strong growth. And we projected construction would be the highest growing industry. And also, since we made this projection, construction has slowed a bit. So I think we're going to be overestimated on construction also. One example that we get from our short-term projections is this chart. This shows the numerical change in jobs by industry. As you can see, we had construction projected to grow the fastest. That's adding 4,381 jobs. Some of those that are losing jobs or not growing, most of those were government and mining. Mining includes oil and gas exploration, and we've seen prices drop and therefore a lot of lost jobs in oil and gas. So I think we'll end up pretty accurate on that projection. Okay, so if you just look at short-term projections, this is the list that you would have of high demand occupations. This is looking 2 years out. So the first list we look at was looking at the current situation, what jobs are employers wanting to fill. This list is looking 2 years out, a little bit into the short-term future, to see what employers are going to need to be filling 2 years out. There are 9 of these occupations that didn't show up on the previous list that we looked at, the JBS list. First line supervisors of production and operating workers, firefighters, paralegals and legal assistants, library technicians, medical and clinical laboratory technicians, web developers, physical therapists, assistants, first line supervisors of firefighting and prevention workers, and massage therapists. Those didn't show up on the JBS list, and those are what we would expect coming in the near term. So, and again, this list only includes those occupations that require an associate's degree or post-secondary non-degree award. So the third source, or the last, the last source of information that goes into our list of high demand occupations is long-term projections. And this is something that I work on. We project out 10 years. We just have released the projection using 2014 as a base year, projecting out to 2024. And this is a list we look at when we start thinking about creating educational programs to meet the needs in the future. We look at this longer term projection because this gives us time to kind of tailor those educational programs and meet the need that will be coming in the longer term. So this projection is assuming no change in the business cycle. So one of the assumptions we use is full employment in the projected year. So this projection is not trying to project fluctuation in the business cycle. It's just assuming we have kind of long-run steady growth, where will we be with jobs in the state of Kansas. The number of jobs is projected to grow by 106,000 over the 10-year period. That's an annual rate of growth of 0.7%. I've been in this position for about 8 years, and in the past, we've projected around 1.1% over the 10-year growth rate. This year, we dropped our projection a little bit to 0.7%, and I think we're seeing that in the jobs data since we made that projection. We're seeing a slower growth. But this is projecting a bit over 10,000 jobs a year. The occupation projected to add the most jobs is personal care aides. We're expected to see 7,483 over the 10-year period. The industry that we projected to add the most jobs is professional, scientific, and technical services. We're looking at 14,000 jobs from that industry. That's 1.9% per year. Professional, scientific, and technical, that's kind of a long name. What that includes is legal services, accounting, payroll services, architecture and engineering services, consulting, veterinarians. All of those groups are included in professional, scientific, and technical services. And right now, there are about 67,400 jobs in that industry. That was in the base year. One example that we get from long-term projections, this chart shows total job openings and job openings resulting from replacement and job openings resulting from growth over the 10-year period by education. So the number in parentheses there is the total job openings. Some of those openings come from growth in the industry or in the occupation, and some of them come from replacement. Now, replacement would be people who leave the position permanently or retire. It doesn't measure people who take one job in that occupation, leave that job, and take another in the same occupation. It doesn't measure that. So you can see the red line. Most of the openings that are projected to be filled or projected to become open due to replacement. So someone left that occupation and they needed to be replaced. So this is not broken down by occupation, it's broken down by education level. You can see the openings resulting from growth are a larger percentage for those education levels that are higher than high school. So on the top 6 education areas, there's a larger percentage of openings that are due to growth compared to less than high school and high school at the bottom. So many of the high school and less than high school projected openings are due to people leaving the occupation. So if you just create a list from long-term projections, this is what your list would look like in terms of what occupations have the highest demand based on long-term projections only. And you can see the list there. There are fewer differences between this list and the short-term projection list than there are between the job vacancy survey and the projections list. So you can see the wages there. Okay. We combine the 3 sources that I talked about to create the high demand occupations list. What we do is, the process is you take the openings from each of the 3 sources of data, you standardize the score or the number of openings. We use a natural logarithm to do that, and then we assign a score from 1 to 10 on each source. So each occupation will have a score from long-term, from short-term, and from JVS. the score is based on standard deviations above the mean. So from the mean number of job openings to 0.2 standard deviations above the mean would receive a score of 1. And if your occupation had a higher number of openings, it would be a larger number of standard deviations above the mean. If you are 1.8 standard deviations above the mean, then you would receive a score of 9, or anything above that would receive a score of 10. So if your occupation scored a 10 in each category, the combined score from the 3 would be a 30, and that would be the highest demanded occupation. So that's how we rank those. The last slide, this is the slide now looking at all 3 sources, what occupations are in the highest demand. So this is measuring demand currently from what employers need right now to 2 years out to 10 years out, combining those sources, what occupations are going to be in the highest demand. So this is what we use when we go into the CTE meeting each year, and we meet with Board of Regents and Board of Education, and we need a starting point, and this is our starting point to start picking those occupations or finding which occupations fit the criteria for CTE, but this is the list that we start with. So with that, does anyone have any questions?
This is great information, because sometimes as a CTE coordinator or instructor, we're not often sure how those occupations are pulled together for the high need, high wage, high skill classifications. Also, I know many of our districts across the state are getting ready to or have already conducted maybe their fall advisory meetings. And this would be valuable information to share with their advisory members as to look at the program areas, and also maybe start talking about, do we have programs? Do we have some gaps? I mean, you indicated that the highest fields are in the health science areas. Are there schools out there that maybe want to explore or consider a health science pathway if they don't have one? Firefighter I saw come up there. These might be some things that might generate some conversations with your advisory board, with your administration, to look at your pathways that you currently have. And of course, then that leads to, are there some pathways we need to retire because they're not leading to some of these high areas, and maybe our students are even having to leave the state to find employment because we don't have a need in our particular state for those areas. So I think this is very valuable to look at that information and find out what those high areas are, and then how they relate to our current local level programs of study. Is there anyone else with other questions for Tyler?
That's a question. Are all of those that are listed considered high demand, or is there a cutoff number that makes them less in demand?
Good question. The occupations that make the high demand list are all above average demand. So we took the median demand, and to get a score of 1, which is the lowest score available, you had to be 0.2 standard deviations above the mean demand. So anything with average demand or less did not make the high demand list.
Great.
Tyler, I have a question. I appreciate and I really appreciate Tyler being on. We've worked with him before, specifically on and all of you would know about this list, but the Senate Bill 155 credential incentive list. So when that list was created, it was created as a way to incentivize certifications that lead to high demand occupations in Kansas. And so in working with Tyler, we were able to come up with that list of high demand occupations in Kansas, and our cutoff for that list was 10, I believe, if I'm right, Tyler, remembering that right. So, so we've done work with Tyler in the past. He's been great, so it's great to have him on today. Tyler, I had one question about a specific occupation, and maybe not specifically talking about that occupation, but maybe you could talk us through the process of how that the types of questions that are asked, because one of the occupations on the, and sorry, Jody, I'm getting a little ahead of here, but on the Kansas Career Navigator, it shows the high demand occupations for regions in Kansas. I was looking through the site this morning because I knew I was supposed to talk about it a little bit today. And I noticed on almost all of the high demand occupations in the area, the top 10 list, that secondary school teachers was listed, but it said secondary school teachers except special education and CTE. And that obviously caught my eye because we continually hear that there are multiple openings across the state in career and technical education teaching at the secondary level. So who would be responding with that information about secondary student or secondary school teaching?
Your question is why they didn't show up in my list?
Well, my question is, so secondary, it lists secondary school teachers as a high demand occupation, but it says secondary school teachers except special education teachers and CTE teachers.
Okay.
So I'm kind of wondering why, I guess, why is it separated out like that?
Okay, well, our occupations are based on the standard occupation code, the SOC code, and that sounds like a SOC-specific question. I don't know why it would say CTE. I'll have to look into that and see if I can find. I'm surprised that it mentions that.
Yeah, obviously it surprised me too. That's what I'm asking. And if those surveys that you spoke so well about, do those go to superintendents? Are they the people who are filling out these job vacancy surveys? And I guess is it categorized by English teachers, by language arts teachers, by special education CTE, to where they're identifying different teacher licensure areas that are vacant? Or is it just a general survey?
We find mostly human resources specialists are filling out the survey.
Okay.
And then they work with our analysts here at Department of Labor. Sometimes it takes a bit of time to get narrowed down to, is this a post-secondary teacher in this area or a different area? It will fall under a different SOC code. So we have to work with them a little bit and make sure they're getting coded correctly, because there is some detail that goes into that SOC coding process. So that's who we usually work with, are the human resources folks.
Okay.
Tyler, just on a question here to maybe kick off from maybe what you were alluding to a little bit. Why didn't education show up on your list? We're talking, and we've talked with colleagues across the state, administrators, about the teacher shortage that they're encountering, especially out here in the western part of the state where I'm from. Is this because the school districts aren't reporting? Can you share with us information on that?
In some cases, it is due to school districts not reporting. We do the best we can to collect as many responses as possible. Sometimes if there are some scattered areas around the western part of the state that are in need of an occupation that's not the same as what is in need in the eastern part of the state where there's more population, and sometimes a higher demand of an occupation in the eastern, in Kansas City, Topeka, Lawrence, will beat out, because we're looking at the statewide area, will beat out an occupation that might just have a pocket of demand in a part of the state.
Okay, thank you.
And Tyler, there's a question. Is this information readily available on the website that you shared with us today?
Yes, it's available on our Department of Labor website.
Can you type that in the chat for us?
I don't know if I can type in the chat. Let's see.
Always learning new skills. That's what we're about.
Okay. What's the website? And then what's www? Okay. Can you see that?
Perfect. Oh, well, no, because it's just to me. Hold on. I'm going to share it now. And then we have another question. Okay, everybody should see those links up in the chat. Where does the wind energy occupations fit into the list, or is it on the list?
The wind energy occupations didn't make the list. I didn't see those in the top 25. Again, this is just the top 25. So there are more occupations. And I don't know what the education value is for those, or what criteria. So I may have gotten rid of those when I chose associate's degree and post-secondary. Those aren't, it's not coming to mind right now what the education is for those.
That's a good point. And if we were to say it was going to maybe definitely be a 4-year degree for those.
Yeah.
Okay. I didn't know if you had Angela there with you, if she wanted
Yep.
to be a time for us to transition a little bit over to the Kansas Career Navigator, since we kind of touched on it a little bit, and Jay's there with us as well from KSDE, to maybe share a little bit about their role or part in creating this website for us. And we'll just kind of turn it over to Angela.
Okay, thank you. She's going to take my seat here.
Oh, okay.
Hi.
Morning. Thanks for joining us.
I don't know if you want me to pull it up, or if you just want me to talk about it.
I think the link's been sent out to all of our schools across the state. I know Martin sent it out earlier in an email. We might have Jody put that back out, or maybe it's on our site too, how to get to it.
Yeah.
So you could at least give us some highlights of it and let us know how we might use this. And I know that in speaking with Martin Coleman, you're in different phases. So you might share with us that if we don't see everything right now, maybe this is a process that's been transitioned right now and growing.
Yep. So we received a workforce, let me think, it's WDQI, Workforce Data Quality Initiative Grant. Round 3, we call it. And in that, we wanted to create a dashboard. And kind of what our purpose was to really try to combine Department of Education, labor data, Board of Regents data, and training providers through the Department of Commerce. And the training that they provide and the certificates. So what we based all of that on was the high demand occupations that you just heard about. So we broke them down even farther into the high wage, high demand. So they have to have a high wage to be able to make the list for the dashboard. Then we took those occupations and we divided them by Department of Commerce has 5 local areas that they really put all their data into. It's based on workforce regions. And so that's what our data is based on, because our grant comes through them. So our data is based on those 5 local areas, which is what the entire dashboard is based on. So what you can do is you go to the website and you want to know for your local area, which let's say you're in the Wichita region, and you want to know what are the high demand, high wage occupations for my region. So you would select them and it would bring up the top 10. And then let's say nursing was one of them. You are now able to click on nursing and then it brings up the secondary education providers that provide the nursing programs for you, and then links to how to apply, what's required, and then the dashboard that we call. So you're looking at nurses now and you can see what are the current openings, what are the future openings. The current openings comes from the, see it in my head, the Kansas Works board, the Kansas Works website. Yeah. Through the Department of Commerce, AGLA. And then all the scores that Tyler just talked about and all the wages Tyler just talked about, all of that information is now in one place so that you can see it for the top 10 by local area. So that's a gist of how the labor data and the Regents data have been merged together and what we based it on. We now are working on what we have now round 5 of WDQI grant money, which is what we're calling the enhancement phase. So what we're doing for that is we're working with Commerce to give us their training provider list by county. So if someone just wanted to go get a certification for what they provide, it would be in there. The biggest thing is from the Department of Education that we're working on. So we're taking all of their career pathway information and feeding that in by county, so that if you were interested in Western County, and I'm from Ricks County, so you click on Ricks County and you see the USDs now. So now you see what's the population of Ricks County, what USDs are here, what universities are here, none, but then you can click on the USD and see what pathways they have. And then if you're interested in a pathway, then it just keeps drilling down to for more information. And if you liked that pathway and it was something you were interested in, is it, what's the word they used yesterday? We were in a meeting. Certified maybe, or something like that. So then, well, what occupations can I work in? And then it brings it back and feeds it back into the high demand list again. And then it shows you all the information that I just did.
Great. So as we're working with individual plans of study with students, trying to help them locate and identify pathways or programs of study, they can look at them now by region, and then they can even look within their school district to see if their school district offers that pathway. Am I correct there? And that's a phase that's in place, or you're currently working on getting that in place?
That's the phase we're currently working on, is getting all of the new pathway Department of Education data into the website.
So as a school, if they put in and apply as the pathway maintenance window opens up here in November, as they apply or update, then that data eventually will be updated also on the Kansas Career Navigator?
I'm not for sure on that.
Okay.
We sure hope so.
Okay. Yeah.
Okay, what do you know?
Well, good question, Joni. I don't know much. I do know that it's morning and it's cloudy outside. That's about all I know today. But thank you for asking me to be on. I am not the person at KSDE who's been working on this. Martin Coleman, Angie Phi, those are some familiar names I know to everybody. They've been working tirelessly with this group and the Department of Labor and KBOR to pull this together. And it really is pulling all our agencies together. And phase 1, which was explained very well, basically starts with the high demand occupations in the different regions in Kansas. What I really like about the site, and I could, if you want me to, I can share my screen and I've got the site pulled up and we can navigate a little bit. But if we're short on time, I can understand that too.
Angela, can you click on Jay and make him host so he can share his screen?
I wonder if I've got a button that says share my screen. So
Okay.
should I just try it? Let's just try it.
It's working. Perfect.
Okay.
Yay!
Okay.
Well, I'm glad I didn't have Facebook up. That's really good. So. Okay. So Kansas Career Nav. And when I looked at this, I thought, oh, cool, I can look at Trigo County. But really, it's just these color-coded areas. So if I wanted to look at, I couldn't look by county, but I could look by region. So if I select Reno County, I know Travis is on. That takes me to the top 10 occupations, local high demand, high wage occupations in that area, not just Reno County, but that area in Kansas. What I like about the site is it starts with the workforce. And that's where our conversations generally start as we're talking in our schools. But for registered nurse, you can look at in that area, the current openings, the short-term and long-term projected openings. You can look at salary. And then over here on this side, you can notice and I believe this is the lowest accepted educational level for those jobs. And then you can look at the demand scores. And I'm not sure if Tyler's still on or not, but if
He's here, yeah.
Is 10 the top score?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Okay. So you've got 8s and 10s there for registered nurse. This is the part I like. If you want to look more specifically at wage, you click on the dollar signs. And now, one thing, it's not just by that area we were looking at. This is all the areas in Kansas, and it starts at the top of the alphabet with accountant. So you'd have to scroll down to find registered nurse, I believe. I may not be doing it justice with the functionality, but at least that's where it takes you with wage. This is the part I really liked, was this link. It shows you all the related programs at the post-secondary level in Kansas. We really feel like this is a very, very strong piece. And as Joni alluded to, this will be part and parcel of an individual plan of study development for students and families and schools to look at. Here's the post-secondary programs in this related area. So I thought that was a real strength. Some of the other, so this was different task duties. So if you're talking about really looking at what being a registered nurse, just the different types of duties that you would perform, here's a nice little synopsis summary of that. And then below that, again, the related post-secondary programs.
Hey, Jay, can I interrupt you for a second?
Sure.
This is Jody. When we were at the CTE meeting the other day, Jana and Joe's on as well, but they touched base on it's, I don't know, requirement or just highly recommended when you have your advisory board meetings to show this. Can you elaborate on that, or if Joe's on? Do you know what I'm talking about?
So you're talking about sharing this information with your advisory board?
Yes. Joe, when we were in our breakout sessions, Joe and Jana touched base on that. So Joe, are you on? I escaped. Okay.
Well, we try not to use words like required or, it's more encouraged, but obviously if you're meeting with an advisory board, now it may not be, I don't know, I was just thinking if you're in a construction pathway advisory board meeting, how would this information be impactful for the conversation? I guess you could look at the different jobs that are, for that area, but it's limited to the top 10. So, but it would be impactful, I think, if you could find the jobs that were related to that pathway for your advisory board members to look at this site and to start the conversation there.
Well, and then the question is too, is Tyler still on as well?
Yes.
Is that, how does that benefit, or how can we, when we're doing our advisory boards, encourage the local community to report to you, or how does that work? What conversations can we have when you're looking at these pieces of data to make sure that it is up to date and that you have the correct information per region?
I'm going to throw that out there. So I am also, I am the program manager for 4 federal programs that we manage, and one of them is called Occupational Employment Statistics, which is what drives most of this wage information and the staffing patterns for all the outlook and projections information. Each school, each region, each USD, at least every 3 years, gets a survey from us that says, hey, we you need to know your title, your occupational titles, and the wages that each of your people make. So these are sent to superintendents, HR, district clerks, principals. Those are the 4 main people that they're sent to. Unfortunately, it's, I guess, discouraging on the low response rates that we get. And we are calling and begging, and the response we get is, well, if it's not mandatory, we're not doing it. We're not a mandatory state. The form looks overwhelming, so anything you can do to encourage these schools to reply. We really, really only need titles. Subject would be great, or else we'll have to call you back because we'd like to know, like, what are high school teachers teaching and professors and what have you. And then a wage. That's it. We just really need 2 columns of data. The form can be overwhelming. The letters can be overwhelming. It's obviously all federal regulated, so they like to add all the words in and make it look scarier than it is. But that is our only source. That's our main source of data to produce all of these data that you're now making your decisions on. So anything you can do to help us encourage them to reply would be very appreciated and helpful.
I have a recommendation is if we can get if you can type in an official name of what you're talking about and maybe even what it looks like, as we're going around and you have some administrators on as well today, is that we're having these conversations about data, and that's a big topic that driving individual plans of studies, driving CTE decisions for districts. If we can prove to them that this is the data you are using and what they're seeing, I have a good feeling that they're going to take the time or appoint somebody, hey, we've got to have this done by this time. But it might be the unknown, and Jay can attest to how many new superintendents we actually have in the state, along with administration. And when something comes across their desk, they might just be overwhelmed by that. And so if there's something that we can help with getting the word out, that's what we're here for.
And maybe it's not the right people getting the message either, because I'm sure a lot of your meetings are with administration, and we usually end up defaulting and sending ours to, like I said, the district clerks or to the HR personnel people, and so maybe they aren't the ones getting the message. So I don't know.
For your information too, across Kansas, the different service centers, or at the State Department, having meetings with the superintendents and with administration. Again, if we're on the same page and have the information, and they continue to see it, they can make a plan of how they're going to deliver it back to you. So again, if they want to pass it back down to a clerk, or if they want to fill it out themselves. So my second part of that is that takes care of schools, but what can we do, since we the business and industry in our area? Is there a same component to that
same
and give to our local communities?
Exactly. I would give you the exact same speech that I give to the schools. Because it's the same source of data. So
if we can get information on that, that would be great. So that as advisory board meetings, making sure and taking a pulse of how many of our board members are actually filling that information out in our region, and that's going to help you.
Actually, honestly, the region we have the toughest time with is Kansas City. So that's our hardest. That's the ones we beg the most to help us. But does Tyler have the group email or something that we can send? I can send you some stuff, or I don't know.
You can send it to Jody. Yeah. She can push it out.
Right.
Okay, you have her.
To myself, and Tyler has my email address, and push it out to me, and then we'll get it on and send it out.
I'll get something together for Tyler, and he said he'll send it to Jody, so that'll be great. I have to leave, but I'm sure Tyler can handle anything, unless you have a specific question for me. I'll be glad to.
Does anybody have a question before she runs?
Sorry.
A little over time, we know.
I thank you both for joining us, and Jay also for stepping in and sharing the screens with us about the Navigator. I think this is going to be a very valuable tool as we are working towards the individual plans of study and working with our students on finding viable employment through our programs of study. So I thank you all for sharing that with us this month, and we'll continue to look at updated data. I think we'll bring our meeting, because we have run over on our time. Jody might just kind of shout out some of the upcoming things that are coming up in the future here that you all might have interest in.
Jay, I am so sorry. That was a quick little question, and I cut you completely off. I am so sorry.
Oh, no, not at all. Not at all.
That was like a burning question from the other day from the CTE coordinators meeting as well. So I thought I try to get that in while we had the experts on there. Not that you're not an expert, Jay, because you are.
You all are the experts. I don't know if I've told you that enough, but you guys are the experts. So thanks for having me on. I appreciate it.
Okay, I'm just going to share my screen real fast and touch base. I did share with you guys this on the very top link is our agenda. And so on the agenda, I did send you links to Tyler's PowerPoint, but I also put it on this. And so when you go up to here to Tyler, I'll put that link there. So when you click on that, the PowerPoint will be there as well. Some of the upcoming events, we do have a career cruising classroom lessons. So if you have or know people who want to walk as a kid, we're doing a day in the life of a kid through career cruising. They're going to have student accounts, and they're going to be a student. And they're going to learn time frame, what it takes, what it looks like from a student's aspect. They're going to do that, and then we'll do the advisor piece in the afternoon. So a little bit, it's a lot different than what we did in our next steps training. We have individual plans of study and other conference in our workshop, and these are links to some things coming up, and you can read through those. Some exciting things happening for CTE, project management, and resource scheduling coming up. And the big one, you guys, I would say is data. On December 7th, we are having Mark Crawford from McPherson and Kalila and myself, and we're really concentrating. I'm going to do the easy stuff of the three. We're going to go over a little bit of the SEEK data, some Gallup poll data, some different pieces of student engagement real quickly in the morning for about 45 minutes to an hour. And then it's all about Mark and his exposure to student clearing data.
National Clearinghouse.
Student Clearinghouse, I always say that 3 times. And his expertise to break it down. So if you're currently using the data, you'll bring it and they'll help. We're just really taking the guts out of it, how to read it, how to use it. And then the second piece of that is if you're not using it yet and you haven't got your information, you're going to have some demo data from another school, and we'll tear that apart. So when you get your pieces in the downloaded, then you can take your pieces and do with them to drive decisions on CTE, individual plans of study, and other items in your district. KSD conference is coming up October 24th and 26th, some great pieces there. And then for CTE, the national conference is November 30th through December 30th, and it is in Las Vegas. So flights are actually really cheap, about $215 or $230 right now. So get on and do that. And then at the very bottom, some links and resources. We talk about, and Jenny's been running into some schools that haven't, their schools are kind of dull, and when you go in for career exposure and CTE. And so this is a link to one of Tyler's pages there, and it's career posters. These are free to download. Great. There's 3 different sizes. They're the high demand, high wage jobs that Tyler was talking about, and some free resources for you to put in your school and to expose these along the way. So some other pieces there. I think we've covered it all.
There's a few chat questions, I think.
Oh, chat questions? Let me get over there. Let me take myself off share screen. If we have share screen, how do I do that? If there's screen, we can't find that. Oh, here we go.
Okay.
There we go. Am I unsharing now? No.
We're still seniors.
Yeah, Deb just can't find the agenda with the link.
Right. So we'll make sure we get that back out to you. If not, I'll redo it. We'll send out those links again.
There we go. Good.
Well, I think we'll kind of close our session today, and I appreciate all of you for attending. And I know we ran over, but we did have some very valuable information shared. Tyler and your team, thank you again. Jay for stepping in, and of course with the precision exams, sharing with us all the information about those things. If there are some things in the future that you would like us to feature or focus on as part of our monthly CTE, don't hesitate to give any one of us three a shout and let us know what you're looking for, and we'll try to put some things together. We'll continue our theme this year with data, and we'll just put out another announcement for our November, and I believe it's in November 11th. I know that is Veterans Day.
Yes.
So some of you may not be in attendance at school, but we'll be here. So we'll broadcast out again in a month. Thanks again, and we'll see you all next month.
This will be recorded, and you'll have a link to that as well.